Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation, silver and gold. As most of you are aware, I myself identify as bimetallic. However, in reality, I am panmetallic. I enjoy all of the metals, especially the precious metals. Gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and even rhodium have been featured here on the channel, as well as some base metals like copper and nickel. But what all boils down to is the monetary metals, and that would be gold and silver. Because for epochs and millennia, silver and gold have been used as money and currency in day-to-day transactions dating back between 600 and 700 BC, when deposits of the metals found together, known as electrum, were found in creeks and other areas in ancient Lydia, what is now known as modern Turkey. And they were forged into coins and utilized as money. These electrum pieces were the foundation of modern money as it became to be known. And when I use the term modern, I'm still talking about the past, because nowadays we understand that these metals are used not as currency at all. But do they still stand the test of time as money? They sure do. You know, it's interesting and fascinating to see how gold and silver have been utilized and been sought after for so long throughout history by many different empires and in nations in the past. The United States of America has a history of utilizing silver and gold as money as well, and that's what we're going to explore in this video right now. Yes, gold and silver. When our founders wrote the Constitution, they understood its value and understood, based off of the lessons of the past, how gold and silver should be used as money. In fact, they recognized and wrote a bimetallic gold standard into the Constitution itself. That's right, in Article 1, Section 10, it makes it explicit that no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender for the payment of debts. That's right. Now notice that the gold and silver will be used as a tender for the payment of debts, but they themselves are not debt, whereas the Federal Reserve note we have now is essentially a debt instrument. So the Coinage Act of 1792 defined that dollar in terms of silver. Specifically, a dollar was to be 371.25 grains, which is about 0.77 ounces of silver. Now, the reason for that odd weight is so that it could be aligned with the Spanish mill dollar. And if you look at that coin, you will see what would be those pillars and had the ribbons around it. That essentially was the symbol for the dollar. That's where it came from. So the foundation of U.S. currency was not on gold, but on silver, as the dollar being the standard. And 1 ounce of gold was therefore valued at about 16 ounces of silver, or $20, which is why you see that coin there with a denomination of $20 on it. So the Federal Reserve notes that we have today are colloquially called dollars. They aren't constitutional dollars. They're banknotes recorded monopoly legal tender status, essentially, by government decree. Now, that does not take away their value, because there's something to be said for fiat, government decree. We all are under that system, and we utilize that system to procure these metals that you see before you here. It's just that when we acquire them, we are utilizing them as sort of a defense against inflation and against what the dollar is. Even go as so far as to say it is a resistance. The Fed didn't eviscerate all sound money at the very beginning when it was founded in 1913. It took quite a long time since 1913. It wasn't until 1971 that we were completely taken off the gold standard. But we were warned by Thomas Jefferson about, leaving the gold and silver standard. He said that he believes banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. The trifling economy of paper as a cheaper medium, or its convenience for transmission, weighs nothing in opposition to the advantages of the precious metals, plural, gold and silver. But even before the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, certain banking and political interests had worked to undermine silver and reconceive of the gold-silver standard as monometallic gold standard. In 1873, Congress moved to sideline the silver dollar. That sparked the so-called free silver movement, which stood for allowing the supply of silver coins to be increased according with demand. In 1878, which is the first year that this coin was minted, the free silver movement got the silver dollar restored as legal tender. Silver continued to be a hot-button issue of the day. And in 1896, William Jennings Bryan gave his famous Cross of Gold speech before the Democratic National Convention. He was the populist orator, which can be somewhat likened to our modern president, Donald Trump, advocated free coinage of silver at a ratio of gold of 16-1, which is the classic ratio that had been set, and a full restoration of the bimetallic standard. The words of William Jennings Bryan still strike a chord. Instead of having a gold standard because England has, we shall restore bimetallicism, and then let England have bimetallism because the United States have, if they dare to come out of the open field and defend the gold standard as a good thing, we shall fight them to the utmost by saying to them, you shall not press down upon the brow of labor this crown of thorns, you shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of gold. Bryan saw gold as the time of the metal of the elites and silver as the metal of the masses. And make no mistake that even among the elites, silver was utilized for more day-to-day transactions than gold was. But gold is the ultimate hedge. It is obviously you pack a lot of value in a small package in terms of the size and density and value there. But Bryan couldn't have foreseen that the banking and political elites would acquire the ability to crucify the people upon a digitized cross of quantitative easing, which is where we're at nowadays. It's crazy. And now we've moved, as we've made our way outside of and stripped ourselves from the ultimate check and balance of monetary policy, gold and silver. We've moved beyond that and moved into an era of easing quantitatively. Even when you tighten the quantitative amount of dollars in the system, you are essentially just pulling back the spigot a little bit to where it's coming out in a great massive amounts of dollars with no restraints at all on our monetary system, which is why you and I will accumulate these metals. Both of them, I believe, is a good way. We should have our own bimetallic standard and hold these precious metals. And I believe it is wise to have both in our coffers as a reserve, as a protection against the hegemony of the dollar, because in reality, throughout the course of history, gold and silver have been the ultimate hegemony, the ultimate backstop against economic instability and crisis. Now, people say that in this day and age, where we stand now, after 1971, when President Nixon completely took us off the gold standard, and even dating as far back as 1944, when the dollar was essentially saved after planning after the Second World War as the world's reserve currency. You know, the gold and silver that you see before you here are from different eras throughout the history of the United States, but mostly in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Then you see some modern examples here standing up. But these precious metals, they still have held their value, even though they're not used in day-to-day transactions, even though they're not used as currency. By all accounts, they are money, dormant or otherwise, and they've been utilized. And it's really in just recent history where they've stopped being used as money. In 1964, in the United States, that was the last and final year that silver was used in its purest form that it had been since the Mint Act of 1792. So, what about these metals? Are they long and barbarous relics delegated to the past, never to be used again? Well, I would say no, because central banks around the world are harboring and acquiring gold in mass in record numbers. Silver, though central banks are selling their stockpiles of silver, silver is indeed utilized in many different aspects of our life, including biomedical technology. And its use as a commodity has really caused it in some way to separate itself even more from gold. But regardless, if there's ever a case where there's a collapse of any sort, which I think is highly unlikely in the near future, silver would obviously be the first metal to be utilized for transactions in the worst case scenario, in the reformation of society. So, what does that mean in terms of where we stand with silver and gold through as we move ahead for the future of the United States and in other countries around the world? I believe that silver and gold will continue to be understood and recognized for the value that they have and the value that they have had throughout history. That is not going away. Even in the modern era, there is more because of the way that digital transactions are utilized more and more around the world, especially in the United States, where a lot of people don't even carry pocket change anymore. I believe it is the perfect time and a perfect representation of utilizing gold and silver to back digital transactions without actually having to accumulate the physical metal. If it's backed and audited as such, there can be faith in money again. Now, obviously, with anything that humans touch, even gold and silver, have been corrupted. But the metal itself can't be corrupted. But whenever humans get their hands on it, or utilize it in any certain way, it can be corrupted. A silver and gold-backed currency could be the future, and it could come sooner than we think, which means that holding the physical precious metal gives you all the more validation that you're doing the right thing. So as we move towards the future here in the United States, let's remember the past. The gold and silver are wealth. They are the ultimate preservers of wealth, for sure. I hope you enjoyed this video. Would like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.